I think your microbiome analogy is so freaking good. Honestly, it's such a great way of looking at that problem, which is this, when we see it, we want to help all those people around us, those close to us. Hey, look, if you only just do this, it never works. Very rarely works. I also think about this a lot. One of the things I ponder the most, I would say, is what causes people to change? Does a human being need to come across significant adversity in order to start looking at things and start to shake their foundations and start to go on that journey of change? I've heard you talk about this, as I have with a good friend of both of ours, Rich Roll. And, Rich will talk about that whole incident where, he needed that pain. He needed that adversity to go on that journey. And in many ways, it's a tragedy, really, isn't it? Because we don't really want everyone to have to go through that level of suffering before they start to go on that growth journey. But then, is there any other way? Is that necessary in some way?
And I really want to believe that there is. And I actually, like everything, I think it is so highly variable.
Sure.
That yes, some people absolutely have to hit rock bottom and other people can do it faster, or other people's rock bottom is more shallow than other people. Here's what bothers me. In this space that I'm deeply in, and you're maybe a more professional, qualified version of the self-help universe, is you get people who talk like there is no human tragedy. There's fucking human tragedy, man. And there are people that they not only do they not escape it, their kids don't escape it, and their parents didn't escape it, and their grandparents didn't escape it. And it is just cycle after unending cycle of people who are unable to figure out how to get control of their own internal experience. And thusly, their internal experience borders on torture. It is a level of self-cruelty that you would never subject upon someone that you love, but you certainly subject upon yourself.
I think it comes down to awareness, Tom.
But I don't want to let go of the notion of fucking rock bottom. Is there another way? I want there to be another way so badly.
I think it's awareness, right? I think one component here is awareness. And let me explain what I mean by that. So my contention is that many of us, including myself, particularly in the past, maybe I'm still doing it on certain things, I'm walking around unconscious to what is really going on. I think the way I am now it's simply the way I am. This is my personality. Now, one option is to hit adversity, right? Where something so tragic, something so painful happens that you start to look at things in a different way, right? But this is what drives me in my work that I do, in the books that I write, in my podcast. This is what drives me. I think it's storytelling, right? Storytelling.
We're in alignment there.
Yeah, but storytelling is arguably the most powerful way to impact people. So,
do you mean self-narrative, or do you mean stories, books, TV shows, movies?
I mean self-narrative. I mean telling people stories on your, what you do on this show, what you do on your YouTube channel, what I do on my podcast, right? You talk to people. And if, let's say you're talking to someone who has gone through that journey and they share their emotions, and as they reflect how they acted in certain situations, people will hear that and they will go, hey, wait a minute, that's me actually in that situation. Hey, like today, someone might go, you know what, I'm that person who doesn't own his name and feels like I don't want to offend people. So maybe they don't need to wait for them to get sick or one of their parents to die. Maybe somebody will listen to that and go, wait a minute, and now he's free from that. And okay, I'm going to go down that road. I'm going to start that process. Awareness is key, right? Awareness is absolutely key, because most of us are, in my view, we are unaware. We are walking around with the blindfolds on in terms of what is really going on. And just to be clear, I am not criticizing people. I was that person. But when you can see the light, when you can see what truly is going on, I think that starts this long period of growth. I don't think it's quick. I don't think it's easy. I think it's a hard journey to go down, but I think it's the most fulfilling journey to go down. So yes, I think there's another way. I don't think you necessarily need adversity, although I think it helps. And I guess this is what challenges me as a father, right? One of the big things that challenges me is this. I feel that I have grown and learned things about myself more from the difficult things that happen in my life than the good things.
No question.
So then the question is, as a parent, you want to protect your kids. You want them to have great experiences. But I also know that it's the bad stuff that can shape us.
How do you do this? This is,
I don't know, man.
This
I'm
is
trying to
top
figure this
3
out.
reasons I don't have kids.
Yeah.
Like when I stop and think about what makes for an extraordinary human being, it is an unending parade of fucking misery that person somehow overcomes. Now, here's the problem. The misery breaks most of the people that it touches. So like when I think about life, man, the school of hard knocks, the school of hard knocks kicks the shit out of most people, and they never recover and they never do anything interesting, and their life is a certain level of suffering. And some people, though, are able to internalize that and go, whoa, there's something really powerful here. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to grow, and I'm going to get better. And I really want to believe that there's this awareness now around growth mindset that is really shifting a tide, and that enough people are growing up and they're not falling prey to that trap because they're hearing about it. And you talked about your mission being born of your son. And while mine is clearly not born of my son, I have a mission that fills me with an equal amount of passion, which is I want to make sure that nobody reaches adulthood without encountering a growth mindset. Like, just to know that it exists. And for me growing up, I didn't know that it existed, so I didn't have a mental model. It's like Roger Bannister in the 4-Minute Mile. Until you know that it's possible, like you can't conceptualize it.
But this is the point I'm trying to make, Tom, about awareness. Awareness is key. And if you are unaware, you can't make those changes. If you don't know what growth mindset is, how can you develop one, right? And I think, I do think things are shifting in the world. I do think there is a growing awareness of all this stuff. I think the internet is a big part of that. We are sharing ideas now. You've got this platform. I've got a platform. We're sharing these ideas. People will hear this stuff, and it is changing their lives. You will get messages just as I do on your DMs in terms of, oh man, I heard that last interview. I get it now. I've done A, B, and C now in my life because of that. Isn't that the most awesome thing in the world on an individual level, that we get to touch people by sharing these stories? The thing I would come back to is, if I think about those episodes that I have recorded, like with Gabor Mate, for example, that is quite poignant. It is quite, if you are not ready for it, it can rub you up the wrong way.
Ooh.
So
why? How?
So what happens, right?
What does he say?
Well, I think he's one of the most compassionate human beings I've come across. So I don't see how necessarily it can rub somebody up the wrong way. But if you are so entrapped with your own stories, right? If you cannot see out that side, if you have an identity that is built up around being a certain way, it can be too challenging.
Is he saying like stop playing the victim? What are the things that would rub somebody the wrong way?
That any addictive tendency you have is rooted in childhood trauma. That is a pretty controversial statement for a lot of people. Having said that, I think the word trauma...
Because what, people want to say this is a genetic disorder?
Yeah, or they want to say, my childhood was great. I had a great childhood. What do you mean trauma? Nothing bad has happened to me. But the way he displays it, the way he explains it is, I think there's real compassion there. And I saw him speak live in London the day before I interviewed him. And he basically, at the end of his talk, he asked the audience, does anybody here think that they have got an addiction that was not rooted in childhood trauma, right?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Right? And so a few people put their hand up. It took a while, but there's a couple of hands go up. So he went to someone at the front and he said, look, before we go down this path, are you open to sharing? And are you open to me asking you a few questions in front of this audience? She goes, yeah, no problem. Really confident. Yeah, no problem. And so he goes, so how was your childhood? Really, really good. Were you loved by your parents? Absolutely. Right, really kind of 110% answers. My childhood was great. Anyway, he kept probing away. This took 2 minutes maximum. And then it turned out that he started asking about her relationship with her parents. And then she said, yeah, I guess, my parents were so in love. I often felt that I was a spare part and I was getting in the way. And the whole audience, you could tell, we all took a deep breath. I mean, it was so clear from the outside. Bingo. And so he honed in on that. And he made a supposition that maybe your various addictions, maybe the way you are now is born out of that experience where you feel that you are getting in the way, that actually you are a burden on your parents. You are getting in the way of their love. He did it in such a masterfully, beautifully, compassionate way, right? And she did turn around and she did accept it. And she did start to, you could tell the tone of her voice changed. What was happening? She was being shown awareness. He gave her that awareness. Now, I don't know what's happened to her. I don't know if she's gone down that journey.
Follow up. Rangan, I want to follow up with this woman. I need to know where she's at, man.
Yeah.
Because this kind of thing is like, okay, when people have a breakthrough like that, are they able to transform that into something that is permanent? So when you think about like habit formation, so this is where I often butt heads with people that take an entirely what I'll call spiritual or woo-woo approach to making real change in your life. Breakthroughs like that are extraordinary. But if that, because they give you the awareness, she has a framework with which to reevaluate her life and maybe the wound that she is seeking to fill with the addiction or whatever. Okay, super helpful. Now, moving forward, what is the process for making sure that somebody then goes down the path of gaining the understanding of how to make the actual changes that you want in life? Because normally what happens is the psychological immune system kicks in. She's now feeling raw and vulnerable. She does not like that feeling. And when there's not the sort of hype, and in fact, I would be surprised if she didn't later have, I don't know her, but one potential sort of response to that would be either the family's like, what are you, crazy? And then she's like, yeah, maybe that was crazy. Or she wakes up in the middle of the night and is like, oh my God, I can't believe that whole audience thinks that my parents didn't love me because they loved each other so much. And like begins to unwind this. I have seen that so many times where you think, oh my God, this person has had this amazing transformational breakthrough, but they simply cannot be open to the fact that they're doing something wrong.
It is hard. I wish I could give you a simple answer and say, oh no, you do A, B, and C and you will be okay. It is hard because I think this lady was maybe, I'm going to guess, late 40s, early 50s. That is many years of developing these shields around her, developing these behavioral patterns, right? I think awareness is key. Is awareness enough? I don't think awareness is enough. I don't think everyone with awareness will do something with it. But I think without awareness, you've got very little, if not zero chance.
How do you get people who don't want to work out to start working out? So simplicity, that's one of your tricks. You've told the story of the couple in their 60s that started doing the workout at the top of the stairs and all that. And then they started doing it like 7 days a week. And so how do you make that stuff stick? Or do you just tell everybody and some people do it and some don't?
No, I personalize my approach depending on who the person is. I try and find, so one-on-one, it's easier than clearly if you're trying to deal with a lot of people or trying to give a message that's going to work for a whole population. One-on-one, I will listen very, very carefully to what a patient is telling me. I will try and pick up on these non-verbal signals. What is their pain point? What is their trigger point? What matters to them? And then I will try and frame the next steps around that.
Do you do move towards techniques or move away? Meaning you don't want to die of heart disease or you want to look good in that bikini.
Again, I don't want to evade the question, but it depends.
There's no universal.
Because I found one thing, how long have I been seeing patients for now? Nearly 20 years, right? There is no one right way that works for every single person. So where I think lifestyle gets so important is sometimes, and you mentioned that couple in their 60s who do this 10-minute strength bodyweight workout every night while their bath runs upstairs. We've spoken about this before. Why is that so important? It is not them going on this huge personal self-growth journey, but what it is, it's starting to help them get in tune with their bodies, right? It's helping to develop a bit of self-awareness. And without that self-awareness, you are never going to get there, right? So I think sometimes even these small steps that people take they're starting to show themselves a bit of self-respect. They're starting to help themselves feel complete. Oh, I can do this. I didn't think that I was good enough to strength train. I didn't think I was the kind of person who could work out. Well, hold on a minute. Now you've been doing it every day for 6 months. Hey, I'm the kind of person who works out. I feel good. Like, I've got more energy. I can see the tone of my body improve. This feels great. What else can I achieve? So this is why I'm so passionate about small things do make a difference. Small things, when done consistently, lead to bigger and bigger things. And so I think it is possible for everyone to grow and everyone to make change. But I think the path by which you get there is different for everyone. And look, if you think about a graph, for me to go on this journey, I've had dips along the way. I've had times when I thought, it is, hey, if you go on this journey and your other half does not, that is hugely challenging. I'm very lucky. My wife is on her journey like I'm on my journey, and we have got this deep commitment that we are committed to self-growth ourselves, and we're committed to be together as well. Even if sometimes it makes it challenging, because if one of you is changing at a different rate compared to the other one, it can...
What do you do when you're in that circumstance? This is so interesting to me.
What do you do? I'm a lot better at dealing with it now than I was a few years ago, that's for sure. Hey, a few years ago, it would lead to rows, right? We
Arguments for the U.S. audience?
Arguments, yeah. It would... it would blow up, and
because somebody's feeling judged.
Yeah, someone's feeling judged. And one thing I've learned on all this stuff is when we're judging someone else, we're really judging ourselves. And again, these things sound super spiritual.
No. This is money. I think
this is genuinely what I think is ultimately the key to good health. If I'm honest, if I'm truly honest.
Relationships specifically, growing
as a person, understanding who you are. Right? Finding out who you are without all the programming from everyone around you. I think it's the only journey worth taking. If you ask me, what is the point of life? Right? Because I reflect on this a lot. I think the point of life is simply to figure out who you are.
I'm going to push you on that.
Yeah,
so
push away.
You brought this up earlier. You default to the words figure out who you are, but then you once followed it up by saying, and change elements if you want. To me, it isn't necessarily that interesting to find out who you are other than to know where the starting line is. And then to me, it's a question of who do you want to become? Like, what do you want to develop? What aspects of your personality do you respect? What aspects of your personality do you not respect? And then be able to change and shape those accordingly. Do you see it like that? Or do you see it as, no, this is about recognizing an immutable truth about who you are. And at least now you know.
I think it's both, because I think what it is it's the process of understanding who you are, I think leads to all the gold in life, right? I think it leads to the passion. I think it leads to you achieving things.
Why do you say that? That does not sound true to me.
Why does it not sound true?
Because I think most people don't have passion. And I think clearing out their head of all other people's judgments about things that they may like and all that will be tremendously beneficial. But to me, passion seems to be the result of a process. It does not seem to be an archaeological dig. It is, it's about building something. It's architecture. So when I think about, like, every time you've said it in this interview, because one time you said, and then you can make changes if you want, I've just sort of said, all right, I'll assume he means as like a starting line. But discovering who you are implies an intrinsic, immutable nature. And I think that who you are is based on, yes, for sure, your wiring. We are not blank slates. I do not think that. Yeah. I'm fucking fascinated by Steven Pinker's book, Blank Slate, which basically hammers home the fact that we come with a whole lot of wiring. So, hey, fair enough. There is some amount of like, your personality is just going to be different. You have 2 kids, right?
2 kids.
So I'm sure they're very different in temperament and 100%, all of that.
Yeah.
So every parent says that. Me and my sister, oh my God, for all the things that we have in common, like we are very different people. So I fully understand that there's a certain amount of hardwiring, and as a starting point for my sister to understand how she's going to react to certain things, and for me to understand how I'm going to react to certain things, is very beneficial as a starting line. But then going beyond that, I think that there are the one constant of the human animal is our ability to adapt. So now my question just becomes for anybody, like, who do you want to become? Like, if you understand how the mind can change, if you don't have a passion, which is probably the number one question that I get asked, don't panic. You can develop one. If you don't like an aspect of your personality, you can change it. You talked earlier about identity. I think a lot of this comes down to, you were saying that I'm the type of person who works out. I didn't think I was, but here I am. I've been doing it for 6 months. Like, that's all grabbing a hold of your identity and saying, the staircase example could have just as easily gone, no, we're going to practice. Every day you're going to come and see me, and for an hour, we're going to talk about what a badass you are in the gym. But I'm not going to let you work out. You're going to imagine, you're going to visualize, you're going to tell me what a badass you are. You're going to go tell other people. And then a month later, I'm going to let you actually go in the gym. And then I think that person, while certainly won't be guaranteed, I think they're more likely to have success because they've done all the work in their identity, their mindset, their belief system, their values, all of that. But that's all malleable.
It is malleable. I guess what I'm saying is that because I feel that many of us are walking around unconscious, we don't actually know what our true passion is. Let's say you do think...
Because you think everyone has a true passion that's lying dormant.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this. If you don't know who you truly are, what you think your passion or, the things you like doing, your hobbies...
What does it mean to be someone? That might be, I may be misunderstanding your definition. So when you say who you are, what does that mean?
So I'm clearly influenced in my conversation at the moment because I'm going through a lot at the moment, right? So I'm going through this path. So I'm constantly shifting. Like, if we had this conversation 6 months ago, it would be different from the way we're having it today, right? So things are changing all the time. So
things in your identity, beliefs, values, what?
Who I am. I could share some of those things with you. What has even changed on this trip to LA, for example, right? So I feel that as the weeks go by, I am understanding more about who I am. And therefore, the decisions I am taking are now different. What I used to think was a passion is no longer a passion. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
Right. I used to be a huge football, or just to be clear, soccer fan. Okay. So, I grew up in South Manchester, right? Soccer is the predominant game in the UK. It is the national sport, right? My older brother supported Manchester United. So I rebelled against that and I supported Liverpool. Now, when I say supported, let's be really clear. I was obsessed. I went to the games. I would check all the transfer speculation 7 days a week. If we lost, I would get upset. When I was old enough to, and I was earning money, I would fly around Europe to watch Liverpool play.
Whoa.
Right? If I was at a friend's wedding and Liverpool playing, I would want to sneak out to see if I could catch some of it. Let's put that in perspective. I was all in with football. My friends would have said, what are Rangan's hobbies? Oh man, he loves football. He loves Liverpool Football Club. Right. Fast forward now, where I don't pay attention to anything that is going on in football.
Wow.
Now, what's going on there? What's going on there? Because I've thought about this a lot. I think that what happens, like many teenagers, you were trying to fit in, right? I can only express my own experience being an immigrant, living in an immigrant family in the UK, where I've got an Indian culture at home. And when I go to school, all my friends, all my buddies have a Western culture. So you kind of almost have these two personalities, your home personality and your school personality, right? So I think that I developed this passion for football as a way of fitting in, as a way of defining who I was. It was my identity. I'm a Liverpool Football Club fan. I get upset when we lose. I'm going to show you how much I care about this team, right? What's happened over the last few years? I don't give two hoots anymore. What happens? Now, that was a gradual process in the sense that as I started to find myself, as I started to strip away the layers, as I started to become calmer and more at peace with who I am, actually, I no longer had that desire anymore. I'm not trying to please other people.
Was it replaced by something? Like, did you suddenly realize, I've actually always been into video games, swimming, basket weaving?
Like, I think there's multiple things that could be going on here. This has also clashed with me being a parent, right? So my time has suddenly got limited in a way that it wasn't before. And my view now is that, I'm so busy, as is everybody. Do I want to spend my free time watching 22 people on a pitch play and start to raise my stress level to something I have zero control over? Or do I want to hang out with my kids or go for a walk with my wife or do something for me? So I think that's one component. I don't think
you could have indoctrinated them and made it like a whole big thing for you and your kids. It's interesting.
I know, and I haven't. So my son does not support the same team as me, right? And my friends are like, "Did you? How have you allowed this to happen?" I said, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to program my son to all the stuff that I've done. It's changed. This journey has changed the way I parent. I feel I'm a calmer. I feel I'm a less judgmental parent now than possibly I was before. I feel I'm in a much better way able for my children to express themselves the way they want to express themselves."
Have they said anything?
No.
Do you think they notice, or are they too young?
Well, my son is now getting to that age where all his buddies are into soccer. So now we're talking about it. And I am trying to get back into it so I can interact with my son, but I'm just not interested, right? So when I say you will start to find your passions, right? What I mean by that is, and I guess we're looking at passion from a slightly different perspective. I'm simply saying that if you don't fully know who you are, okay, I think it's very hard to know what it is you truly want. So I get so much satisfaction these days. Like, I love my life, right? I don't mean that to sound like a dick, right? I say that because I genuinely do. Like, I love the career I've got. I love the fact that I get to help people, that I get to write books, record podcasts with really cool people. So I get a lot of growth from it. But then I also get to share this thing and help inspire hundreds of thousands of people. I love it, right? So would you say I've replaced following a football team for having a career that I'm super stoked about? I'm not sure it's that straightforward that I've replaced it with something else. I just feel now I'm not trying to be someone who I'm not anymore. I don't think I am anyway. I feel I'm now more in touch with actually what it is I want. Like what it is, you know, I'm not into this whole third person piece where how you talk about yourself, but like how one might talk about themselves. I'm thinking, but you know, what does Rangan Chatterjee want, right? Not what does he think he wants. And so I'm not sure.
Not what you think you want, or not what you think you should want?
Both. You know?
Did you ever have unease around football? Like, was it a thing where you're like, oh God, I've kind of backed myself into a corner, but why the fuck am I flying to see this team?
Unease, I wouldn't say about that. I remember in 2007, so in 2005, Liverpool got to the Champions League final. I flew to Istanbul for the day from the UK to watch it. It was, you know, regarded as one of the best finals of all time. Liverpool were 3-0 down at half-time, thought they were done. You know, the whole crowd starts singing, inspires the team. They come back to 3-0 and win on penalties. At that time, that was probably the best moment in my entire life. At that time, right?
Sure.
Two years later, in 2007, we are also in the final again. I fly with my same buddy to Athens for the day to watch the final. What happens? I'm sitting in the Liverpool section with my buddy, and things are not going well. Liverpool are losing. Suddenly, this group of guys turn around and start screaming racist abuse at me.
Randomly?
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to repeat what they said because
That's so crazy. Your own supporters?
Your own supporters. I had my shirt on. I was with my buddy who's a Caucasian guy, you know, to the point where we both felt super uncomfortable.
That's so weird.
And I had never, ever had that at a football game before. And so that could also be a slight trigger at the start of the end of my love affair with football, because I thought, and I've examined it, I thought, isn't this interesting? When things are going well, when the teams are winning, everything's great. But as soon as people start to get frustrated, they sort of take it out on people. So I didn't like the way that made me feel, for sure. We moved into a different part of the arena. So I don't think I've ever experienced any negativity apart from that, if I'm honest. So I have not tried to stop watching football. It just no longer fits with where I'm at the moment. So,
and that feels to you like you're discovering who you really are versus just evolving.
Well, I think discovering who you really are is evolving. You know, maybe you could clarify. What do you mean by that exactly?
I think what I'm saying is I look at us like we are a chemical processing plant that shifts and changes how it responds to its environment based on its environment. So if you grow up as an immigrant in a foreign country, then you're going to have a very different frame of reference than you would if you didn't grow up in an immigrant family. So that's one way that you have a frame of reference. If you're not loved as a child, that creates another frame of reference. If you're bullied, that creates a frame of reference. If you grow up poor, frame of reference, rich, frame of reference. So all of these things give you a different perspective with which to view the world. Now, none of them are the real you. There's no real you. Oh, you grew up rich and that's the real you. There's no grew up poor and that's the real you. But I think those people would come out very different. So we were talking about how kids are wildly impacted by adversity. Okay, so is that kid fundamentally themselves when they're facing adversity, or fundamentally themselves if they're not facing adversity? I don't think there is sort of a fundamental self. I think that we come with wiring. Everybody's different. I think you do have sort of a baseline personality. I think it would be useful to understand like where you're going to struggle versus somebody else. For instance, I find it, while I am introverted, I find it very easy to put on my extroverted hat. So I'm an ambivert. Now, other people, my sister, for instance, is wildly extroverted. So it is like useful for us to know sort of our what we're like in our idling state. But when I think about even what I was like 10 years ago, it's radically different than I am now. But back then I would say was authentically me. But there were problems that I had not addressed yet. And now I feel like I'm authentically me, but for sure I'm better than I was 10 years ago in terms of my ability to stay emotionally calm and centered. Things that I'm pursuing are different. And 10 years from now, I will be radically different. But I don't believe any of them were me laboring under a false sense of identity, even though some states were suboptimal in terms of my ability to enjoy my life.
I think my journey was absolutely defined by false states of identity. And I guess that's where this passion about this comes from, is because I can now reflect back and go, yeah, sure, that felt authentic to me at the time. I didn't feel I was faking it, right? I didn't. I thought that was me. And you could argue, right? And I probably can't disagree that on one level, is this just a natural consequence of getting older, right? Is this just what happens as you develop more life experience? I'm not convinced it is, because I think you can grow older, become wiser, change, not be as reactive in your 40s as you are in your 20s, a bit more chilled about things. Sure, I think that happens to a lot of people. But I do think that when we stop looking for answers externally, when we start going internally, I think we start to figure out, who we are. And there are many versions of who you are, right? Maybe it's not just one thing. Maybe you can go down this path and come up with lots of different conclusions. I don't know. I'm still on the journey, right? So I don't know. If we do this chat in 2 years, maybe I've got something different to share. But at the moment, and I've got to say, if I take it back to the consultation room with patients, right? Because that's one thing I've got a lot of experience in. Tens of thousands of patients over many, many years. Yes, I'm a huge fan of lifestyle change, for sure. But I think that lifestyle change can be very limited for people. It can be very challenging for some people because there's underlying issues that are unresolved. And I find the people who really get true freedom from their health complaints, often, I'm not saying always, right? Because it's a very delicate area, but generally, I find that they have taken, their mindset has shifted on some level. They have started to change certain patterns in their thinking.
It has been so transformative in my own life to do that, to step back and go, oh, I was on a path that I was so unhappy. And I had the world's most fixed mindset. So for anybody that hasn't read Carol Dweck's seminal book, Mindset, fixed mindset is where you believe your talent and intelligence are fixed. You're just born with it, is the way it is. Growth mindset is your talent and your intelligence can be changed through deliberate practice. So I was headed down one path where I thought, I was just born with this, whatever this is. And my life was about putting myself in situations where I felt cool and smart and didn't believe I could get any cooler or smarter. And then when I finally realized, oh, wait, that's actually a dumb way to frame the world, click, binary switch over to, I choose to believe that I'm malleable, that I can get better, that I can get smarter, that I can learn something today that I didn't know how to do yesterday. And I went from, just to make this really gross for a second, I learned all of that in a dingy 1-bedroom apartment in a bad neighborhood with no furniture because I couldn't afford any. And we're now recording the podcast in my gigantic Beverly Hills mansion, right? And I'm saying that is a result of the mindset. That is not a result of me being better than somebody at something. That is a result of me figuring something out that I think not everybody can do, but anybody listening to this podcast, if they've made it this far, they meet what I call minimum requirements.
Well, that is an empowering story. What I'm getting from you, Tom, is this idea that change is available to us at any time.
Correct.
And, we explore this a little bit on my conversation on your show about what does it take for us to change? Do we need adversity of a certain intensity to ask ourselves, to challenge our own belief system and make us change, basically? And I guess this is something I know you wrestle with. I wrestle with this all the time. I lie in bed thinking about this stuff, thinking, do you need fundamentally pain on one level to actually start the process of change? I don't think necessarily you do, but I think a lot of us, unfortunately, that is what ends up happening. That certainly is for me. What was it for you? How did you go from changing from a fixed to a growth mindset? Because I've heard people say, you've either got one or the other. You've either got your fixed mindset or you've got a growth mindset. And this fascinates me on an individual level. This fascinates me for patients that I see. Frankly, this fascinates me for my children, right? 2 young kids under 10. I want to learn from you about these different mindsets. If we are malleable, if we can adapt, if change is always available to us, then what are those things that we should be doing?
So here's the bad news about my story. It, of course, involves pain. So I didn't have to hit some crazy rock bottom, so I'm very grateful for that. So mine was a mixture of deep personal shame, of feeling like I was talking a big game about being successful, but I was not doing anything to actually become successful. And my father-in-law certainly was lovingly calling me out on that. And made it clear that he didn't want me to marry his daughter because he didn't see me doing anything with my life. And his very pointed question was, how do you plan to take care of my daughter? And my response to him was, I know what you see as a broke, out of work, undereducated kid, but I'm the most ambitious person you've ever met. And then the next day I laid in bed probably for 4 hours in the morning and had done that the day before and the day before and the day before and the day after and the day after and the day after. And it wasn't until finally I was like, man, I'm telling my wife or my then fiance, I'm going to make her rich one day, and I'm not doing anything to actually make good on that. And I've been saying this stuff for a very long time. I've been telling people I was going to be rich probably since I was 11 or 12. And so I just thought, wow, I say this all the time, but I'm not doing anything. And the fact that my wife, then fiance, is having to guilt me just to get out of bed, like that's a bad sign. So that begins a process. There was nothing binary, unfortunately. It wasn't like some lightning rod moment where one day I have a fixed mindset, then I have a growth mindset. Like I'd started researching the brain by this point. And so I'm thinking like, yeah, man, like it is a little weird that I'm not doing anything. Like, what do I know about the brain that would sort of explain this? And then as I begin learning about the brain and start coming across some of these ideas about brain plasticity and how much we can change, and I start really buying into that, then I meet people that they wouldn't have called it a growth mindset. We didn't have that language back then. But they had a growth mindset and they believed that they could change. And so I was like, whoa, yeah, this thing that I believe, I'm actually seeing it here in reality. And so right then I got involved in being an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur is like, if you want a growth mindset, put your house on the line and start a business. You'll get a growth mindset real fast, because it's either that or you're going to lose the business, because you just have to own, I'm not good enough yet. I do not understand this. I'm too dumb to pull this off. So I really better get smart fast.
So are many of us too comfortable then to develop a growth mindset? So if our lives are okay, if we have a roof over our head, if we can pay the bills, and we're not, let's say, deeply fulfilled, but we're just going around living our life, we're waiting for the weekends, we get smashed on a Friday night, a Saturday night, to sort of, for a whole multitude of reasons, you are making the case, I think, that you can just choose.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound too easy, because it is not, and the brutally difficult, it's deadly simple, but it is very difficult for most people. So the problem is far more insidious than, it's just people are too comfortable, because you have billionaires killing themselves. So we're dealing with now a mental health crisis. And so to really unpack the answer of change, you can talk about it without talking about the microbiome, but it would be a mistake. And so getting to really understand your physiology, I hope, is one of the things that I beat the drum so hard that people really begin to research the brain. They begin to research mood disorders. They understand exercise. They understand diet, because what ends up happening is your mood is so dysregulated, your belief system is so dysfunctional, and the psychological immune system is so strong that you get that biofilm around your belief system that becomes impenetrable. And no matter what you say to people, no matter what example you show to them, they just cannot shake themselves out of dysfunction. So what's happening is people have created an identity without realizing that they've created an identity. So if you're going to recognize that your identity in and of itself is a construction, and then ask yourself, okay, well, what would be the ideal identity to construct? The answer is to be that of the learner. If you have a fixed mindset and your identity is something that is anything other than being a learner, it is very fragile. So to use Nassim Taleb's language, you need to build an identity that is anti-fragile, because if you don't, when someone attacks you, what happens? You feel badly about yourself, right? It's very easy to get under somebody's skin because you've triggered their insecurities. When you trigger their insecurities, the psychological immune system kicks in and it says, no, Rangan, you're not bad. They're bad. They're dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. They're an idiot. Only a fool would not be keto or not be a vegan or whatever their identity is wrapped around. And so they go on the offensive, and they never stop to think, hey, I'll give everyone listening, lean in. I want you to hear this part. When somebody tries to hurt you, they will almost always start with something real. So they're going to come at you with the thing that they know you're most insecure about. And so why do people, when somebody, people always like, if they come after you for your looks, it's because they've lost. No, they're coming after you for something they know will hurt you. So people are coming after you at a place where they are most likely to trigger you. The triggering is the psychological immune system, which is beneficial because people with the highest levels of self-delusion also report the highest levels of happiness. So that's incredible, right? That's super powerful. I'm so grateful for the psychological immune system. I can only imagine the number of times it saved me from spiraling into despair because I see myself a little too accurately. So I get its use. But if you flip your mentality and say, my identity is not as a entrepreneur, it's not as a vegan, it's not as a doctor or a podcaster. My identity is that of the learner. That's it. The only thing that I value myself for is my willingness to admit when I'm wrong and to learn. Now, the secret power there is, one, it's anti-fragile. So the more you attack somebody for being stupid, if they're a learner, I am literally asking one question when somebody says I'm doing something wrong or I'm dumb. What am I doing wrong? In what way am I dumb? Because if you give me that piece of information, I grow more powerful. So I'm always looking at the hilarious secret about wanting people to criticize you is like, the more you try to hurt me with something real, I have the chills. The more you try to hurt me with something real, the more powerful I'm going to grow because I'm actually going to open myself up. Even though you're saying it to hurt me, you are actively trying to tear me down. You're probably going to hit me with something that I can learn from. And so what I always tell people is when people are chucking rocks at your head, think of them as actually being gold nuggets or bricks or whatever. And you can take that gold to the bank. You can take that brick and build a house, like however you want to think of it, but you have to let it hit you. You can't deflect it and send it flying off in another direction. You've got to take it. It's going to sting a little, but then you're going to have that material with which you can do something. And so if you build your identity around being the learner and you're constantly growing, over time, you grow more powerful. but you have to lower the psychological immune system, or you can tweak it, much like you can go in and edit a virus to deploy something in the human body. You can edit the psychological immune system to say the only thing you can protect me with is that I'm the learner.
Love it. I mean, I love that. I love this idea of being anti-fragile.
That's Nassim Taleb for you.
Yeah, what a beautiful concept. What a powerful idea, particularly these days, right? Where we're all getting offended at every little thing. We can't put anything out without getting offended by someone. But what does that tell you? You know, as we discussed, Tom, I mean, I love these days I'm in a really good place where I feel I can, any friction in my life, anything that starts to bother me, for me, that's an opportunity to learn. That's an opportunity. Why is that bothering me? Why is that triggering me? Is there an element of truth behind this? Or do I disagree? I don't think I'm as anti-fragile as I would like to be. In fact, I know I'm not, because I'm constantly trying to grow at this stuff. But it is even just that flipping mindset whereby instead of looking at who's posted the comments and looking them up and thinking, what do they know, right? That sort of thing. It's like, hold on a minute. Is there an element of truth to this? Why is this triggering me? And I think that then comes back to this idea that you said, when we realize that these ideas that we have constructed are simply, they're just constructs we put in our mind, right? But if you have not realized that is what you said, you've not realized. So how do you help people? Is it possible to help people who have not yet realized, or who don't accept that what is in their mind is a construct, that accept this is the way I am, this is my personality, I cannot change that?
So here's the very distressing and painful realization I've come to. It's probably possible. It does not violate the laws of physics. So there is some like magical answer that you get to. And as a doctor, you well know it's going to be different for every person. So now it doesn't scale. And since I'm obsessed with scale, I just had to let go. If somebody's not already there, if they're not willing to go, okay, I buy that premise and now I just need like the different paths and the ways that I go about this, but like the central premise I buy, I just don't put energy there. I actually find that very distressing. And my initial inclination, because a lot of this, of course, is born from there are people that I love that don't have a growth mindset. And so it started with, I just want to help that person. And then you realize, wow, man, I've been at this for decades and I've made no progress. So this is certainly a function of me. I'm not good enough to make that breakthrough. So I can keep going and try to optimize my everything for that one person. Or I can say, you know what? When they have sort of terraformed their own mind to the point where they're receptive to this, I will be here. But until then, I'm going to go over here and just say, all right, look, here's a base assumption that I have. If you agree with that and you want to understand like where I'm coming from and how to use these tools and tactics, like then I'm here. But otherwise, there's a guy named Jeffrey Canada who introduced me to this concept. And I really want to get him on my show because I think I'm quoting him accurately, but I responded so strongly, and I probably encountered this idea almost 15 years ago now. And he grew up in Harlem and said, I'm going to go get a degree and I'm going to change the education system. And he ends up getting a full ride, I think, to Harvard, and goes back into the school system and realizes, whoa, you can't change it. And gets very influential in starting up his own education system and realizes that you can't save the adults. And so he said, you have to give up on the adults and focus on women who are pregnant or may become pregnant. And all you need to do is get them to read to their children, because it's the number of positive words people hear by the age of 5 that like he considered the single most predictive thing of their future success, which is exactly why he said your zip code is so predictive of your future success, because it basically says how many words, positive words, you're going to hear by the age of 5. And I was like, fuck, that's crazy. But when you think about the language centers of your brain and like what that impacts in terms of future ability to communicate and get a good job, and oh man, it's just crazy. So anyway, that whole concept of give up on adults, focus on kids, gave me the language to understand, give up on people for whom it's not that it's an impossible task. It's that it is so hard it doesn't scale. Go where it's easy. And if you're talking about education, easy is young. And so when I think about mindset, The easy is people who already embrace the notion of a growth mindset. They may not have built one yet, but they believe in it.
So how do you build one?
So that's easy. Like once we get to the part where, okay, now you're prepared, you just have to understand the confluence of things that make up your frame of reference. You can think of it sort of as a mini personality. So your frame of reference is going to be dictated by your beliefs, your values, your identity, your habits, your routines, basically all the things that fall into the default network of the brain, anything that you do automatically. So when you get a grasp on those things and realize that all of them are malleable, like beliefs, people often mistake for objective truth. And it simply isn't true. Like when you think about the fact that your brain is doing its best to create a virtual environment for you that is in no way, shape, or form meant to objectively represent reality. Like just think of the narrow band of the light spectrum that we see, the narrow band of frequencies that we hear. Like it's really small. And our brain has just gone, these are the ones that matter to us. But if you did the same to a bat, it would crash and die. So it's like, it's different for every species. Every species took a different Umwelt, if you will, strategy and said, okay, here are the things that I care about. Here are the things that I care about to optimize my environment. I think that the byproduct of the nature of the human animal is what you see, which is a deep propensity for self-loathing, which you don't accidentally escape that. I think that it takes a lot of work for people to become something that they're proud of, to contribute meaningfully to the group. I think that we have so many mechanisms designed to keep us alive. Don't resent the negative voice in your head that is saying bad things about you. That was so important at a time where if you were ostracized, let's say you were a sailor and they left you on an island because you couldn't tell that you were pissing people off or that they didn't like you. Like that was some real life or death stuff. So all of these mechanisms served a purpose. We just have to now also be grateful for our ability to be self-aware, to learn about the brain, to be recursive in our thinking and go, hey, does that belief serve me?
Let's talk about a really tangible example. So we're talking about beliefs that we have constructed. So a very common thing for people to have is negative self-talk, right? So, I see it in friends, I see it in patients. I can't stick to any diet. Okay, this always happens to me, right? So there are universal truths for sure, but are those statements universal truths? No, clearly not. So somebody who is listening to this, who is he says, yeah, man, that's how I talk about myself. I'm pretty hard on myself. I put myself down all the time. I'm not the kind of person who exercises, workouts, they're just not for me. Oh God, I'm the one who always gets passed up for that job promotion, right? Are these examples, in your view, of self-limiting beliefs that can be shifted?
Definitively. And
definitively.
Yeah. So
in every case.
1,000%. Those particular examples, 1,000%. So my thing, a rule that I live by and a rule that I aggressively try to give anybody that will take it is only do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. So if you want to feel badly about yourself, then telling yourself, yeah, I always get passed up for a promotion, the world is against me, like that is a dark place to live. If you want to have the confidence that's needed, the lightness, the charm, then you've got to internalize that, oh man, if you add value, you're going to move forward in life. This is all going to work out. It's going to be amazing. The amount of almost delusional optimism you need to be a successful entrepreneur is hilarious, because if you can't believe, you certainly can't get anybody else to believe. And so you've got to have this willingness to say things like that in your head. Like right now, my stated goal is to build the next Disney. Now you can imagine the odds of me pulling that off border on zero, but I don't think like that. I can't allow myself to think like that. So it's I have to say, okay, this is interesting enough to me. And what I value myself for is the sincere pursuit. So I've completely divorced myself from the outcome. I don't care. Whether I do it or not is irrelevant. What I value myself for is, did I show up every day and actually go for it? Not rhetoric. Did I actually go for it? Was I constantly checking myself? Am I actually making progress? Am I doing the right things? Could this possibly lead me where I want to go? And if it can, then I get to celebrate myself at the end of the day. And if it can't, I'm just BSing and I'm just saying things to like say something cool and get people's attention, then I don't get to feel good about myself. So when you are able to go, oh, it wouldn't behoove me to sit here and focus on this is impossible. There's only one Disney for a reason. I'm never going to be able to pull this off. Like if you can recognize that if you tell yourself you can't win, you will act in accordance with that belief. Like you will only push so hard. Whereas if you believe, no, it's not going to be easy. But through deliberate practice, I can get so good. I can learn all the things that I need to learn. I can get the right people excited. I can get people motivated. I can make mistakes. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but I'm going to learn from those mistakes. And I'm the kind of guy that learns from mistakes. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. I just keep trying and trying and trying. And people like being around me because I'm uplifting. I'm high energy. I'm a lot of fun. So I'm going to be able to attract the right people. So when I meet somebody, I'm not thinking he's never going to like me. Like there's enough going against you to not be fighting yourself with self-defeating. I won't even say beliefs, just repeating self-defeating things, repeating even negative things. You have to understand the power of repetition. People do not understand the power of repetition. You repeat negative things, you're going to believe negative things. You repeat positive things. At first, it will sound like BS to you, but over time, you'll actually be very comfortable with the idea.
This is different though, isn't it? From just saying the right things. Because you shared that, back in the day, I don't know, maybe in your 20s, you would say, oh, wait, it started a lot younger. I am going to be rich. Okay. I don't know if you said I'm going to be a success, but you were saying the right things, right? So you had that positive language, yet you were not doing anything to actually make that come true, right?
This is not the secret. I'm not saying say positive things and everything changes. I'm just saying you remove one roadblock. Did you ever see The Secret?
I have not yet.
So I'll give it to you super fast. So The Secret is half amazing and half absolute BS. The half that's amazing says if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And that is true, dude. The way the mind works, man, if you believe it is possible, then you're the Roger Bannister effect.
Yeah.
It stood for decades. People thought that the 4-minute mile was humanly impossible, that the human body just couldn't do it. One guy was like, nope, it's not true. Ends up running the 4-minute mile. Okay. A barrier that stood for decades. He breaks the 4-minute mile. And then within 45 days, I think somebody else breaks the 4-minute mile. It stood for decades. And then within the year, 3 people break it in one race. So once you believe something is possible, all of a sudden it gets a lot easier.
It's like the 100 meters. I remember as a kid, there was this magical 10-second mark, right? I don't know when it got broken, but now in most races, everyone's under 10 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like various things. It's the same kind of thing. So beliefs are powerful. But I think it is important to clarify that point because it's not just about saying the right thing. So again, trying to bring it back to a listener who may be struggling with their weight and who has a bit of negative self-talk around that I can't lose weight. I've tried every diet. It's too hard. So they could hear this conversation and go, okay, I get what Tom's saying. I think I get what he's saying. I need to be positive. But you're not just saying you have to be positive, are you? You're saying something more difficult than that, or certainly something that requires a bit more work than that. So what is that you are saying? Well, let's take that as an example. Somebody's trying to lose weight. They can't. They feel they tried every diet. They feel they can't get a consistent pattern going in working out, etc., etc. So break it down for them. Is it several steps? How do they start changing their mindset in that particular situation?
Yeah. So when somebody is talking about weight loss, my first thing is always, you've got to love yourself where you are at. Now, that's not going to be enough. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, just stare at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself 10 times a day. It's not going to work. But it really does have to come from a place of compassion. You're not going to be able to whip yourself into great shape. Like you, one, have to get very comfortable that you're worth making the change. Otherwise, you're not going to stick with it. And then two, you have to get to the laws of physics. So does anyone think that if I put them in a prison cell for 3 years and I gave them no food, that they would walk out morbidly obese? No, right? Nobody thinks that. Now, they will think that's unreasonable. The person would die of malnutrition, which, depending on your level of obesity, is actually not true. And I think the longest water-only fast was something like 384 days. It was absurd. It was more than a year. So you can water only. I want to be very clear about that. So no one, like if you really get down to brass tacks, everybody gets that no one is in a position where it would be impossible to lose weight. So then it becomes, okay, if we know that it's not impossible, then it becomes a question of what are you willing to do? Then you have to ask, am I willing to do what it's going to take? And if you're not, that's fine. Like it is an absolutely reasonable life to me to say, I know what it would take to get in better shape and I don't want to do it. Okay, cool. But if you're going to live that life, I have one recommendation: live it fully. Really enjoy it. Say, my life is going to be a lot shorter than it would otherwise be. The one area where it gets tough is your level of inflammation is going to be so high that it's just going to be hard to enjoy your body. But let's say that you're able to get past that. Lean into it. Enjoy it. Relish it. I always tell people, the only thing that is heartbreaking, eating a bowl of ice cream is not heartbreaking. Eating a bowl of ice cream every day is not heartbreaking. Eating a bowl of ice cream and being sad about it and being ashamed of it, that's sad. That's heartbreaking. So whatever path you choose, know that you're a worthy human being, regardless of what path you choose. So now if it's like, well, I've tried the being out of shape path and I don't like that anymore, and I want to go to the other path, okay, rad, let's get excited about that. Like, let's go all in.
If you enjoyed that conversation, I really think you're going to enjoy the one I had with Professor BJ Fogg from Stanford, all about habits. It's right there, so give it a click and let me know what you think.
The feeling of success is what wires in the habit. Emotions create habits. And specifically in Tiny Habits, what we focus on is